Hello and good morning for the next session to a video about sacred geometry as a base for eco-architecture. Oh no, the title is the other way around, but doesn't matter. At the beginning I want to talk a little bit about me. I'm just 66 years old since 3 days. And I've studied many years ago in Germany, architecture, urban design, and a bit sociology and philosophy. I started studying 1974 and never stopped until today, because I love learning. I think life is learning. The next step in my life was that I get knowledge about sacred geometry and started studying sacred geometry in 1998. It's already 22 years.
Yeah.
And I think to get a certificate in sacred geometry you have to study 222 years, because sacred geometry is touching nearly every part of our life. So 2006 I integrated this results of sacred geometry and my study work in all my art. That means in architecture, sculpturing, in painting, graphics, in energizing objects, light objects, and so on. And I called it since then art of the heart. My definition of art is bringing together head, hand, and heart. So I come to art of the heart for all the different subjects. Today it is mainly going about eco-architecture and based on sacred geometry. There are, for eco-architecture and for sacred geometry, two dimensions I have to talk a little bit today. The dimension for how to use sacred geometry is very simple to explain, because I use sacred geometry from the basis of sacred geometry, that means from the flower of life and Fibonacci. When we start working on a project, we need all the input from the land, and one point is also the input to scan the land, what I can do with my own body, or to use somebody who has experience in dowsing the land. And there are also methods in between developed to make a technical check of the land, and it's all about energy. When we're talking about sacred geometry, we're talking about energy, vibrations, frequencies, and resonances. That reminds a bit maybe to Tesla, because he said to understand the world, it's important to think in this or these dimensions. So when we have scanned the land, we have to find out about the grid of the flower of life, what I normally use to structure the land. Of course, it's important whether the land has 500 square meter or 500,000 square meter. It's a question of the size of the flower of life grid. The flower of life grid can be done like it is orientated also on historical or traditional methods, like in Bali, where I stayed for 10 years. They have the tradition to use the measurement of the people who make the buildings. That means the owner or the builder of the house give the measurement from his body, and everything has a relation to his body measurement. So I take in Bali the measurement of the people who want to build, and they like it very much, to make the grid of the flower of life. For example, somebody is 1 meter 65, so the radius is 1 meter 65. And another one is 1 meter 82. The radius for the construction of the flower of life is 1 meter 82. In common buildings, I use mostly the golden ratio, or the number 1.618, that comes to the golden ratio and brings together also the construction of the flower of life with Fibonacci. To use Fibonacci is what I did the last years mostly, because I like to work with these flowing forms that coming from Fibonacci. But it can have also reasons to use the flower of life because of the subject or the content of the project we're working on. So that is part of the decision process. The next step is then to integrate all the other informations about data from geology and data from the weather, all the informations about what is around 25 to 50 kilometers and has an influence, an energetically influence on the building, like mountains, ocean, rivers, and so on. Every natural position or deposition that has an inner energy influence on the area of the land. Then when it comes out that we have no energy point or found no energy point on the land, I make normally a geometrical analysis of the land. And then we find a point where we can, what I call, hang on the grid of the flower of life. This process is very simple. The flower of life is then all the time the background for the architects and engineers who are working on this project. And so they energize this project drawings. When the drawings coming to the land and the workers following the drawings, what is not always, but when they follow the drawings, they bring this energy potential of the flower of life, or the sacred geometry, is the better word for it here, to the land. The main important point for me is really to follow the results of the flower of life, or what is coming from the rules from sacred geometry. So I want to go a little bit deeper into this point of energizing and how important it is not only for architecture, also in architecture. It is clear that a healthy man or woman has about 85% water. That means when I have a structure like the flower of life that worldwide is known, that you can energize water with it, then it's no question that we can energize the architecture or the structures we build with the flower of life, because we know that the bodies who are going to this field are 85% water, and when you go deeper, the cell itself has more than 99% water. So on the cell level, the energizing process is very, very important. Another possibility to use sacred geometry for energizing is what we see here. That is also part of my art. It is called mythoGraphics, coming from mythology and graphics. This I developed in my time in Bali, and we found out more or less by accident that the power of my graphics is higher than the flower of life. Maybe because it's based on the flower of life, most of them. That means we made an experiment and put 5 bottles with the same water on 5 different graphics, with the result that every water tastes a little bit different. The next step was that we thought, okay, when we have this result on water, what is the result when people use it for healing? So I sold when I coming to UK about 40 graphics to an institute in London, and they use it especially for therapy on different levels. So the importance of the graphics has not only this aesthetical effect, of course you can only enjoy them, but it has also the effect that you can learn meditation very easy with a mythographic you have chosen. You concentrate about 10 to 15 minutes on the mythographic, and then you will be in the state of what the people call meditation. You will be with yourself, and that is the easiest way to learn meditation, I know. Another point is to energize water, or to bring water on a different level, whether it's wastewater or fresh water, doesn't matter. But I designed also, I would say it's structures or sculptures where the water is flowing through to be cleaned and energized. Another possibility is to use sacred geometry in every kind of interior design. I developed, based on Fibonacci, furniture, especially tables. I make sculptures of wooden sculptures based on mythographics. Oh, sorry. Based on sacred geometry, and so on. So there is no limit. Even if a painting you want to structure, you can go back to sacred geometry and especially to Fibonacci, what is always also used in photography, I think by less than 5% of the photographers. I have here some questions I write down who should show you the importance of what I just talking in the last minutes. The first question is, what are the basics for creating atmosphere? The second question would be, how are the good vibrations generated by architecture and design? And the third question, when becoming frequencies, compositions of harmony? This is what we have to do in architecture. This is what we have to do in landscape architecture. This is what we have to do in the process of creating future. What is my definition of design? In creating future, it is very important that we accept that the human beings have an electromagnetic field around and going and crossing through an electromagnetic field that is called architecture. Before I come to the next point, I just want to make this as a short summary in the more or less middle of this film, I guess. The next part I want to talk about is what is the ecological dimension of new projects or renovations or reconstructions, what they say in English. The main point is that I work on this subject now nearly 50 years, that many things have not changed about the situation to create with materials that are not healthy. I give only some examples, only to make it very clear. When you decide to have tiles on the floor and you not test the radiation of the tiles, the possibility that you have a radiation from the tiles is so high that you should not have children who play on this floor. That is one example or possibility where you can go in the wrong direction, I call it for me. The other point is that many normal or conventional building materials are mixes of products they want to get rid of in the industry. So you have products that are definitely not healthy for you, built in the house and have a whole life influence of your being. The third point I want to mention is that the impact of the air that is in a house on our health is also very, very important. That means the change rate of the fresh air. Not talking about drinking water and all the other aspects of healthy living you can find in thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of books. I only want to mention here that we are far, far away from realizing what is possible in the moment in this area. Another aspect of ecological architecture is that we can use the flower of life for organizing. That means that we can develop diagrams, horizontal diagrams, not vertical diagrams for decisions. The preparation of a project should always be based on a concept, and the concept needs these structures that are coming also from the flower of life. Structures that horizontal show you the important inputs that have an influence on the main situation when you start to use the project. Coming nearly to the end of this short film, I want to talk a little bit about the essentials I wrote down as a result of more than 40 years discussions about architecture, creating architecture and making art of the heart. So these essentials are extreme compact form to describe my understanding of eco-architecture and development. I like to see it as a bridge for mutual communication, acceptance, enjoyment, and infinite enthusiasm. So my first proposal is to answer the question, what is architecture? Architecture is the queen of art and design. Architecture is the integration of all sciences. Architecture is the basis of health and of human beings, important for saving energy and water. Architecture is always related to landscape design. Architecture is able to save natural resources. Architecture is connected to the basics of living. I come back to the first point to describe a little bit what I mean with architecture is the queen of art and design. When I take one of my mythoGraphics and give them to the neighbor because I don't like it, that's a solution how art can change from one place to the next. I can give my sculpture, no, I'll not put it in the garden and compost it, it's wood. But when I try to remove this wall or this floor, I have a little problem. That means architecture, or the result of architecture, is a prison of forms. This prison of forms is forming your thoughts. It means it has an influence how you think. There are many tests we can find in literature in between, but at the end of this film now, I like to come to a small summary I made here as preparation for parts of my philosophy. We are living in a created world, and there is no difference between the simplest bamboo cottage and the newest mega tower of modern skyscraper architecture. We are all living in a nexus of energies, vibrations and frequencies. We are all living in resonance to this created world. The results of architecture and landscape design are always holism and independent whether architects are involved or not. Architecture and landscape design always affects users, human beings, animals, plants, objects, and so on, and also its own structure. The result of architecture and landscape design are starting a process of vibration, radiation, frequencies and melodies, compositions that generate an effect of permanent resonances on the user. Thank you very much for listening to me, and enjoy a wonderful day.